All right, you beautiful bastards, buckle up, because this deep dive is going to be a wild one. We're talking about Mikhail Kavalishvili.
Wait, so
Yeah, the dude who went from bending it like Beckham for Manchester City to becoming the fucking president of Georgia.
it's a fascinating and, let's be honest, utterly bizarre career trajectory.
Bizarre is putting it mildly. The guy's got some seriously hot takes, like accusing the U.S. of trying to destroy Georgia. And his election was about as legit as a $3 bill.
Yeah.
But before we get into that shitstorm, let's rewind a bit. Expert break down Kavalishvili's football days for us. Didn't he play for some big-ass teams?
You're right. He wasn't just some scrub. He started with Dinamo Tbilisi in Georgia, won some championships there, then moved to Spartak Vladikavkaz in Russia, before making the jump to Manchester City in the Premier League. This was back in the early 2000s, before Manchester City became the global powerhouse they are now.
Yeah, but still, the Premier League is a fucking big deal. Was he actually any good, or was he just riding the bench?
He was a legitimate talent, scored a goal against Manchester United in his debut, no less. For a Georgian player at that time, playing for a Premier League club was a massive achievement. He became a national hero, symbolizing the potential of Georgian football on the world stage.
Damn, talk about making a splash.
Okay.
Okay, so fast forward a few years, and this goal-scoring superstar decides to trade his jersey for a suit and tie. What the hell prompted this career change? Was he always a political animal, or was this some kind of midlife crisis move?
It's interesting because his move into politics wasn't completely out of the blue. After a successful stint in the Swiss Super League, he returned to Georgia and got involved in various social and political initiatives. It was clear he had ambitions beyond the football pitch.
So he wasn't just some dumb jock who stumbled into politics.
Not at all. He strategically aligned himself with the Georgian Dream Party, which has been the dominant political force in Georgia for years. He got elected to parliament in 2016, but things got really interesting in 2022.
Spill the tea, expert. What happened?
He left Georgian Dream and co-founded a new party called People's Power. It's widely seen as a satellite organization for Georgian Dream, a way for them to exert even more control.
Ah, so he's playing the game, creating his own little power base within the system.
Yeah.
And then, boom, he decides to run for president.
Exactly. And that's where this whole shit show really kicks off.
Yeah, let's cut the crap. Expert. This thing was rigged from the start.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, no other candidates on the ballot, opposition parties boycotting the whole thing. It's like they weren't even trying to hide it.
The election process was certainly highly unusual and has been widely condemned by international observers. The lack of competition reports of voter intimidation and the fact that he won with something like 99% of the vote, it all reeks of manipulation and authoritarianism.
So he basically waltzed into the presidency with the help of his buddies in Georgian Dream and his own little puppet party, People's Power. What a fucking joke.
But what does this mean for the average Georgian? Are they pissed off or are they buying into Kavalishvili's bullshit? There's a deep division within the country. Some see him as a strong, decisive leader who will stand up for Georgia's interests even if it means going against the West.
So they're drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking this ex-footballer is their savior. What about the people who aren't buying it?
They're terrified. They see him as a threat to democracy, a puppet of Russia, and someone who's going to drag Georgia into a whole new level of chaos. They boycotted the election, claiming it was rigged from the start, and they're now planning protests and trying to mobilize international support.
Okay, so we've got a country that's deeply divided, a president who seems to have a serious God complex, and a whole lot of uncertainty about what the hell is going to happen next. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty of Kavalishvili's views and the potential fallout of this whole mess, let's talk about the electoral system in Georgia. How the fuck did this outcome even happen? Did the guy just stuff ballot boxes, or is there something more nuanced to it?
It's not as simple as stuffing ballot boxes, although I wouldn't put it past this guy. Georgia's electoral system is complex, and it actually played a significant role in how Kavalishvili was able to secure the supposed landslide victory.
All right, expert, hit us with some knowledge. How the hell does this electoral system work, and how did it benefit Kavalishvili?
Georgia uses a two-round electoral college system, kind of like what you see in the U.S., but with some weird twists. In the first round, a candidate needs to get more than 50% of the vote to win outright. But if no one hits that mark, the top two candidates go head-to-head in a runoff.
Okay, so that makes sense. But how did this system help Kavalishvili pull off this sham election?
Well, because the opposition boycotted the election, he was basically running unopposed. And since there was no real competition, he easily cleared the 50% threshold in the first round. Even with low voter turnout, it was a total farce.
So basically the electoral system combined with the opposition boycott handed him the presidency on a silver platter.
And
It's like they set the whole thing up for him to win.
That's a pretty accurate assessment, and it raises serious questions about the fairness and legitimacy of the entire process.
Yeah, it's a total clusterfuck.
Yeah.
But let's move on to this guy's views. I mean, he's been spitting some serious fire talking about revolution and accusing the U.S. of trying to sabotage Georgia. What's his deal? Is he just trying to stir up shit, or does he genuinely believe this crap?
His rhetoric is definitely inflammatory, and it's hard to tell how much of it is genuine belief versus calculated political maneuvering. He's tapping into deep-seated resentment towards the West among some segments of Georgian society.
So there's some real anti-American sentiment in Georgia. Why the hell would they hate us?
It's complicated, but it stems from a long history of geopolitical tension and conflicting interests. Georgia has been caught between Russia and the West for decades, and the U.S. has been a strong supporter of Georgia's independence and its aspirations to join NATO.
Wait, hold up. Georgia wants to join NATO. Isn't that like waving a red flag in front of a bull, considering Russia's feelings on the matter?
You've got it. Russia views Georgia's NATO aspirations as a direct threat to its security interests, and they've made that very clear.
So Kvashvili is basically playing with fire by cozying up to Russia while accusing the U.S. of trying to destabilize Georgia. This dude sounds like a walking contradiction.
He's definitely walking a tightrope, and it's not just rhetoric. His actions also suggest a shift in Georgia's foreign policy. He's been critical of Western influence, praising Putin, and even hinting at the possibility of closer ties with Russia.
Is this guy for real? Is he actually considering throwing Georgia into the arms of Putin?
It's hard to say for sure, but his actions are certainly causing alarm bells to ring in the West. And it's not just the U.S. European countries are also concerned about the potential consequences of Georgia drifting away from its pro-Western orientation.
Okay, so let's connect this back to Kvashvili's past. I mean, he played in Russia for a while, right? Could that have something to do with his pro-Russian leanings?
It's possible his time in Russia might have shaped his views, and he might have established connections that are now influencing his political decisions.
Interesting. So we've got a former footballer turned president who's playing footsie with Russia, accusing the U.S. of being the bad guys and potentially jeopardizing Georgia's future. What the fuck are the potential consequences of all this?
Oh.
I mean, is this dude seriously going to drag Georgia into a war with Russia?
It's a real concern. The situation is incredibly volatile, and any misstep could have disastrous consequences.
Let's break down the potential scenarios here.
Yeah.
What's the worst case scenario? I mean, are we talking World War III?
I wouldn't go that far, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that Georgia could become the flashpoint for a major conflict between Russia and the West. Remember, Russia has a history of military intervention in the region, and they've shown a willingness to use force to protect what they perceive as their interests.
Yeah, the 2008 war over South Ossetia and Abkhazia is a pretty good example of that.
Exactly. And if Kvashvili continues to provoke Russia, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it could easily lead to a repeat performance, but with potentially even more devastating consequences.
Okay, so we've got the worst case scenario. What about the best case scenario? Is there any hope that this guy will come to his senses and chill the fuck out?
The best case scenario is that he realizes the gravity of the situation and moderates his approach. He could back off from the anti-Western rhetoric, try to rebuild trust with the international community, and focus on addressing the internal challenges facing Georgia.
So there's a chance he could pull his head out of his ass and actually try to be a decent president.
It's a slim chance, but it's not impossible. However, it would require a significant shift in his thinking and a willingness to compromise that he hasn't demonstrated so far.
Well, let's hope he doesn't fuck it up too badly. But let's be real, this whole situation is a complete shit show. And it's not just about Georgia, it has implications for the entire region. Experts break down the potential ripple effects of this Kvashvili mess. What the hell could this mean for the Caucasus and beyond?
The Caucasus region is a geopolitical powder keg. It's a crossroads between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And it's riddled with ethnic conflicts, territorial disputes, and historical grievances. Kvashvili's pro-Russian leanings could embolden other separatist movements in the region, like those in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which could further destabilize the region and drag Russia and the West into a proxy conflict.
So this shit could spill over Georgia's borders and turn into a regional clusterfuck.
Exactly. And it could also have implications for global energy security. The Caucasus is a major transit route for oil and gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea to Europe, and any instability in the region could disrupt those flows, which would send shockwaves through the global economy.
Damn, that's some high-stakes shit. So we've got this ex-footballer turned president playing a dangerous game with Russia, pissing off the West and potentially destabilizing the entire Caucasus region. What the fuck does this tell us about the state of the world today? Is this a sign that we're headed for a new Cold War or some even bigger shitstorm?
It's definitely a sign of the times. The post-Cold War order is crumbling, and we're entering a new era of geopolitical uncertainty. The rules-based international system is under strain, and power dynamics are shifting. We're seeing a rise of authoritarianism, a resurgence of nationalism, and a growing distrust between countries.
So basically, the world's gone to shit.
Not necessarily, but we're definitely at a crossroads, and the choices we make in the coming years will determine the course of the 21st century.
All right, folks, that's about as deep as we can dive on this episode. We've covered Kavalashvili's wild ride from football star to controversial president, his inflammatory rhetoric, his cozying up to Russia, and the potential fallout of his actions. We've also explored the broader trends of democratic backsliding, rising authoritarianism, and geopolitical instability. It's a lot to digest, and we don't have all the answers, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Remember, knowledge is power, and the more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the complexities of the world around us.
Words stay curious, stay engaged, and stay the fuck away from any politicians who promise simple solutions to complex problems. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.